Hey everyone, let's get to making Marnie's hair. And jewelry, I guess. Like the video. I'm going to organize the outliner before we start. Here's our Marnie so far. Move the cursor to origin with Shift S. Time for some hair. Shift A, add a cube. Position it in wireframe view. Add a subdivision modifier. Turn off optimal display. Scale down in edit mode. Turn up the viewport level on the subdivision modifier to 2. Match the cube more closely to the reference. Rotate by about 32 degrees. You can hold Control while rotating to snap to degree increments, or Shift to rotate slower. Shift and Control work with the other transforms as well. Turn up the viewport display even more. Scale is needed to fit nicely within the bounds of her hair. Move these vertices down. You might find it helpful to enable the visibility of the rest of your model. Select all and shade smooth. I'm going to turn my model back off so that it's easier to see what I'm doing. And let's make some of these other hair objects. Shift A, add a cube. Probably a good time to name our new objects. Move this cube. Scale it down. Add a subdivision modifier, turn off optimal display. Delete this bottom face. Add an edge loop and rotate it. Scale down. Move the top over. Rotate. And scale down. Move the middle edge loop back on the Y-axis. Scale up on the Y-axis an almost imperceivable amount. Move the top back as well. Scale down on the Y-axis. Change the transform orientation to normal. You can move this plane on its local Y-axis with this enabled. Go back to global orientation. Extrude out a face. Scale by 0 to merge the geometry at center. I do this instead of merging at center with M, so that we can still add edge loops to this upper loop of faces if needed. Move these 4 merged vertices on the X-axis. Also, forward on the Y-axis. Select all and shade smooth. Rotate and position this object to match with the reference. Since we were guessing at the object shape, make any changes to help it match to the reference. When you're happy with it, duplicate this shape and position it to be the other spiky hairpiece. Make shape changes as needed. Select a vertex on the other hair spike, hit Ctrl L to select all linked and hide with H. Continue shaping. Unhide with Alt-H when you're happy with the new shape. Make any additional changes. Add a mirror modifier to the hair spikes. Use the main hair as the mirror object. There are many ways to make these individual hair pieces. I'll try to cover several different methods that I've used in the past as we make her hair, and you can choose which one you like the most, and make all of her hair like that. Let's start with potentially the easiest, curves. Shift A, add a curve, path. In edit mode, select all and rotate. Move the individual curve handles, which look like vertices, closer to her hair object. Position the handle so that the curve moves down the center of her biggest hair strand. In the Curve's Object Properties tab, adjust the bevel depth under Geometry. Position the handles better. Also position them to match in side view. Hit Alt-S and drag the mouse to adjust the diameter of the curve at each handle. This hairpiece isn't perfectly circular, so you could use a bevel object or make a custom profile for it and get exactly the shape. Curves are incredibly versatile and great in every way. But I'm just going to keep mine simple and use a circular bevel. And that looks pretty good to me. In object mode, duplicate this curve and turn it into the smaller hairpiece. That looks pretty good. Add a mirror modifier to these curves. Use the main hair object as the mirror object, just in case your object origin isn't centered. And this is how she looks so far. Now let's make her bangs. I'm going to show another way to make hair pieces. Shift A, add a circle. I used 12 vertices, but it doesn't really matter since we're going to retopo it. Place it at the base of her bangs, scale as needed. Now extrude, scale, and rotate to build this shape. The fewer circles you use, the easier to control. Scale the tip by 0 to merge so that you can add edge loops later. Add edge loops and position as needed. Building shapes this way can get out of control pretty quickly unless you're very careful with placement. This looks pretty good. As always, adjust things until you're happy. Also, you could just use curves to make these pieces if you like that method more. Copy this object to make the other 3. I'd recommend copying in object mode to make retopo easier. Hair like this can be a little difficult to retopologize if there's a ton of close together shapes. Adjust this new piece to match the reference. You can see the circles aren't lining up as nicely anymore. By the final one, they're just kinda all over the place, so maybe start fresh with each hair piece if you want to create the bangs this way, but want it to be more controlled. You can dissolve any particularly troublesome loops and remake them. Select all and shade smooth. If you want it to be smoother, add a subdivision modifier. My shapes are a little small from the top reference, so I made them a bit bigger. They're not perfect, but they work. I'll show you a slightly more controlled way to build shapes in a similar manner when we make the hair ribbons. Prepare the bangs for connecting to the main hair object, and make any changes you want to their shape. Her hair isn't perfectly symmetrical, so I'm about to change it somewhat destructively. Whenever you're about to make a destructive change, copy and archive objects so that you have an earlier version to go back to. Apply the subdivision modifier. Use proportional to puff up the front of her hair. In object mode, move the cursor to selected and put it at our hair's origin. Change the pivot point to 3D cursor and with proportional editing, scale it to puff up this side of her hair a bit. I ran into a bit of an issue later, because I didn't put any sort of guide shape for the connection between the main hair and the bangs, so retoppling that area felt a little clunky. But it's definitely looking a lot like her hair at this point. Set the cursor back to world origin, and let's make her necklace. Shift A, add a circle with 8 vertices. Make sure your pivot point is median point. Position and scale to match your necklace. Shape with proportional editing. Place and extrude up. Extrude the upper loop and merge at center. Position the center vertex somewhere around here. Do the same on the bottom loop. Move this top loop back. Select all and rotate to match the reference. Shade smooth. Mark the edges as sharp. Add an edge flip modifier, deselect edge angle. Now let's make the rest of her necklace. Shift A, add a 5 vertex circle. Scale down in edit mode. Looks like by a factor of 0.010. Rotate by 20 degrees. Scale on the Y axis. Pull in these vertices. Select all and rotate by 90 degrees on the X axis. Hit numpad 1 to go into front view. Turn on the reference. Position this object near the necklace. Line it up on the reference in edit mode. Move cursor to selected with Shift S. In top view, use the spin tool. Click this button. Use 12 steps, 360 degrees, auto merge, and deselect use duplicates. Add some edge loops with Ctrl R. Select these 12 vertices and move on the Y axis. Select these 6 and extrude. Do the same on the other side. Select these 4 and merge at center. Do the same on this side. Select in this order and merge at last. And again here. Add edge loops here. Select and extrude down. Merge at center. Pull this middle vertex up. Select this edge loop, Ctrl-Shift-R to offset with 2 edge loops. Select these 4 vertices and move on the Y axis. With only the back 2 selected, scale on the X axis. Move this vertex up, select all and position. The blue X-ray line kind of shows where it is in side view. Select these vertices, extrude back. Scale out. Connect with F. F3 to search for subdivide. Delete these faces. Fill in these faces. Alt select this loop. Extrude up. Position to match the reference. Fill in faces. Smooth shade. Select edges and mark as sharp. Add an edge flip modifier, deselect edge angle. Mark everything else you want marked. Select these 2 objects in this order in the outliner and join them together with Ctrl J. Move it into the Marnie collection. Now let's make the earring. Shift S, set the cursor back to world origin. Shift A, add a plane. Rotate by 90 degrees on the X axis, and by 45 degrees on the Y, or without specifying axis in front view. Put the object origin on her earring. Scale down in edit mode. Scale down more on the X axis. Extrude forward in edit mode. Merge at center with M. Position to match the reference. More importantly, match it to your model. My ear is a little too thick, so the more accurate way to fix it would be to adjust the ear, but it's fine either way. Name the earring and put it into the Marnie collection. Enable the visibility of these 3 hair objects. In the object properties, enable wireframe for each of them. Turn up the curve resolution. We're going to turn these 3 objects into one, but we'll start by combining the 2 hair strands. Disable the visibility of the spikes, add a plane. In edit mode, merge at center. Position it near the hair tip. Turn on snapping. Start snapping to our hair to build new geometry. I ran into an issue where snapping stopped working whenever I turned off the visibility of my mirror modifier. I couldn't figure out what was the cause of this at the time, so I just kept my mirror on. I think maybe it wasn't working because this object is a curve. So if you run into a similar issue, try converting your curve into a mesh by selecting it in object mode, hitting Alt-C, select mesh from the drop-down menu. Try to follow the wireframe as a guide as you retopo. Fill in faces as you go. Enable in front so you can see your retopo object. This process takes a long time, so I'm going to speed it up a bit. There's other potentially faster retopo methods that we'll probably go over at some point. If you're interested in learning how to do it, try looking up shrink wrap retopology. You could also use the curve's geometry, adjust and simplify to connect them into a lower poly object. Recalculate outside if the normals are flipped. Hide stuff that gets in the way. Connect these 2 vertices with an edge. This is a weird area to connect, edge slide this over. Cutting an edge here with K, and here. Snap the new vertices into place. Extrude an edge up this way. Try to line this edge up with where the objects meet. Create an edge on this side as well. Fill in faces. Do the same on the other side. Cut in an edge here. Fill in the faces. Add edges wherever you need to make your shape work. Merge these 2 vertices so that the hair fits together. That's one of the hardest areas to do. Now, just keep retopoing. I chose to extrude a few entire edge loops out to speed up the process. Be sure to turn off snapping while extruding. I was going to attempt to simplify my geometry here, but ended up not. Merge vertices wherever you want to reduce your geometry. And when you're done, add a mirror modifier. Hide the curve objects. Shade smooth and see how it looks. I have a few things I'd like to change. Turn back on the curve object. Move some of these vertices out. Use the knife tool to cut in edges here. Dissolve the extra edges. Click this button if you want an X-ray view. Snap the new geometry to the guide objects. Watch the shading to try to minimize weird angles. How you're rendering your character will dramatically change how picky you have to be with your topology. Mark these middle edges as sharp. Add an edge split modifier. Get this inside edge as well. This looks pretty good. Turn off snapping and kind of round this out. Turn snapping back on. Add geometry to anything that looks a little too flat to you. I just want the curve to look mostly smooth from every angle. Name your retopo object. I'm not sure what this plane is, so I deleted it. This is going to be another pretty difficult area to lay out the topology for. Duplicate a vertex and snap it to the main hair object. You can turn off the mirror modifier for now. I'm going to make some final adjustments to my hair shape with proportional editing. Move this solo vertex up to the tip of this pointy object and begin retopoing. Recalculate outside. This is kind of a weird one, since we want to join these two spikes as well as the hair strands, and don't have everything touching. This is one of those wing it and hope it turns out kind of situations. We're going to focus on combining the two spikes first. This is a pretty challenging object to do low poly. Now that we have these two basic shapes, let's connect them together. Select these two vertices and merge together with M. Turn off snapping and smooth out your shape a bit. Delete this vertex. Use the knife tool to cut in extra geometry wherever it's needed. Enable and disable snapping wherever it makes sense. This area looks a little too flat, so I'm going to cut in another edge. And snap it to the guide object. Here I need more geometry to connect the hair strands, so I just cut in more. Select all and shade smooth to see how it looks. Make adjustments so that the shading looks a little nicer. Cut in edges wherever the geometry seems light. I spent a lot of time trying to adjust the geometry here. Hopefully it's a little better off for it. Now let's begin retopoing the main hair object. Turn off the guide hair spike object. F3 to search for subdivide when you need to add vertices to an edge. Snap the new vertices to the guide object as you go. The knife tool is also handy for adding geometry. Merge vertices anywhere you want to simplify. Select and hide anything that's in the way. I'd almost recommend turning the hair spikes and strands into a separate object from the main hair object. For this part, there's a line on the reference that we can follow. Now we need to give this some extra shape. Use the knife tool to cut an edge here. Turn off snapping. Pull this vertex down to this line on the reference. Merge these two vertices at last. Match to the reference in side view. Do some edge sliding. Shift this geometry around to give the back of her hair some shape. There's a hole in her hair here, so move stuff around to get rid of it. Select these two vertices and merge at last. Merge these two as well. Select all and merge by distance just to be sure. I apparently had an extra one somewhere. Select these two vertices in this order and merge at last. Change to vertex snapping. Turn on wireframe in the face object. Snap the hair object's edge to the face's geometry. Extrude out a vertex here and fill in the space. Select all the vertices on this side hair thing and hit P to separate by selection into a new object. I duplicated before separating, but don't do that, because now I have to go back and delete this hair strand, and it's a lot of work. And it's hard. Shape the back of her hair even more. Merge these two vertices at last. Extrude a vertex in. Fill in a face here. Create an edge here. Subdivide this edge. Edge slide and fill in these faces. Move this vertex up a little. Extrude one out here. Move back on the y-axis. Fill in these faces. Turn off snapping and move this vertex out. Also move it up a little. Extrude out a vertex. Fill in the faces. Her hair isn't symmetrical, so apply its mirror modifier. Turn back on the main hair guide object. Snap the vertices on this side to the guide object. Enable in front to make this process easier. Select these vertices and move them down a bit. Turn on the head and scale the sideburns to fit. Move out this vertex on each side. Select this vertex and extrude out an edge. Create an edge here. This is kind of a cool trick. Change the pivot point to active element, the orientation to normal, choose edge select, and select these edges with the big one last. Scale down on the x-axis to flatten out this edge. Change the settings back and fill in the faces. Mark these edges as sharp. Now to connect the bangs to her hair. Cut in an edge here. Join vertices with J. Divide this face with J. Select and delete these faces. I turned them into a second object in case, but it's fine to just delete it. You're probably an old pro at retoppling by this point, so do these hair pieces however you want. It's probably easier to separate each of the three bangs into their own objects and retopple them one at a time. There's a lot of hair objects at this point, so let's make a collection for the retopple guide objects. Now retopple these bangs however you'd like. Until you get a solid shape going, the face orientation can be difficult to control. Hide stuff as needed while retopoing. Cut an edge in here. Delete these faces. Once you get everything connected, attempt to smooth things out. There we go. We could definitely make this smoother, but I like it lumpy. Even so, keep adjusting until you're happy. Select all and shade smooth. Now it's time to connect the bangs to the hair. Snap vertices to the existing opening. Shift stuff around with proportional. Extrude, merge, and shape. If you have trouble with this, make a shape guide to snap to. Fix anything you don't like. It's never too late to adjust or redo. She has the cool crown thing shaved into her hairline, so let's make that real quick. Use the knife tool to cut in edges. Edge slide and dissolve edges with X as necessary. Cut some edges in with the knife tool. Re-enable the main hair guide. Duplicate it. Separate by loose parts with P. Select this new object. Scale on the X and Z axis by about 10%. I tried a few things and ended up going with 0.91. Turn on snapping and snap these vertices to the new guide. Cut in the second thing here. I did a fair amount of edge sliding and changed the topology slightly. Turn back on the smaller guide and snap. Be mindful of your camera angle as you snap. Try to line yourself up so you're essentially snapping towards the center of the guide object. Edge slide to smooth. And now the final one. Turn off snapping and make any adjustments you want. Snap anything that moved back onto the edge of her face. Do the outliner thing, organize and naming and whatnot. Turn off wireframe. Looking pretty good. I have some extra edges in her bangs that I should clean up, but besides that, not bad. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, leave us a like, or perhaps subscribe if you haven't already. As always, feel free to ask any questions, or just drop us a comment. We love hearing from you guys. Stay safe. I love you all. Goodbye!